Righty. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Women with Mojo, a conversation with an inspirational and motivational woman over 40. And I am so excited to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jill Lebofsky, the Midlife Mojo Master. And I started my company, Midlife Mojo, as a mission to be a source, a resource of education, of tools, of support, of inspiration for just women in their midlife years and beyond. I named my company Midlife Mojo because mojo means magic. And that's what these years should be all about. Finding our adventure, our passion, trying on new things. And so I've created the Women with Mojo series for women who are already out there doing just that. They're bringing their gifts to the world and they've got a story to share. So I encourage you to participate in the conversation. Hey, Marva, I see you there. Thanks for joining us. I encourage you to participate in the conversation, ask questions. We may not get to the questions to the end if there are any, but if it feels natural flowing in there, we will add it in. But otherwise, just, kind of hang out for a little bit, and we're going to have a really, really great talk today. Because I'm really excited to introduce to you my guest, author. Actually, I like to introduce her this way. She's my guest, Dr. Dora Vilk Shapiro, aka steamy romance novelist, Doris Vilk. And I'm going to bring Doris on in just a moment, but let me just read you a little bit about her, and then we will get to talking a little bit more. So Doris is a retired dentist of 29 years. She was a family and cosmetic dentist and taught at Broward College and at Nova Southeastern College of Dentistry. She's a Cuban refugee as well as a cancer survivor. And after many health challenges forced an early retirement, she did a major shift, a life shift, and her trilogy of steamy romance mysteries was birthed. So let's bring on Doris.
Nice to be here with Jill this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. You look beautiful. Big, beautiful smile there. So I'm excited. We were just chatting for a moment off camera, and I said, this is going to be good because we're both talkers. So this conversation will be great. And I'm excited to learn more about you. Some of you may have seen Doris. She's a big member, big participant in our Midlife Mojo group. But this is a real good chance to kind of get to know the woman behind, the name, right, that we see up there. So I'm very, very excited to learn more about you. Now, Doris, I always like to start these off with helping my audience just to get to know a little insight into you a little bit. And so I just asked the question, in this moment, in this day, what is something that you're thankful for in your life, and why, maybe, if you want to share?
Well, I'm grateful that tomorrow I can get my second COVID vaccine.
Yes, there you go.
That's huge. I'm grateful for my husband that helped me with the technology so that I can be here this evening.
I hear you on that.
And I'm always grateful for my family, obviously, and for living my mojo dream, which was to live on a condo on the beach, and worked all those years with that goal in mind. And here I am, and life is great. I thank God every day.
I just love that. We're both Floridians, so I hear you. We call this time of year, we call it from our house being in the red zone. Well, the rest of the world is under snow. We live here in the hot red zone.
Yeah.
So I do. And, even before we even go into a little bit more, I love what you just said there. And I want you ladies to hear what she just said, right? She had always dreamed of living on the beach and having this and imagined it and thought that. That's energy. That's real live energy when you think something and you want it and you desire it, and that's how you manifest it, right? You may have to do a little work along the way to make it happen, but that's awesome. So thank you for sharing all of that. Hey, Susan, thank you for joining us as well. So let's start let's take us a little bit back a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So I can't wait to get to the whole steamy romance part. I told you I just read the whole book yesterday. I couldn't put it down. So I am excited to talk more about that. that. But this is all about, a woman's story, taking her from where she was to where she is now. So I kind of want to start off and actually, I'm going to take you back even a drop before, if you don't mind, real quick. You mentioned in your thing a Cuban refugee. So were you here? Did you come here as a child, as an adult? Just share
Yes,
that.
I came to the United States around 1964 when I was, or 63 when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And we went through Mexico and Jamaica and came to the United States. And my dad wasn't able to get his visa, so went through some traumas there until he was finally able
Mhm.
to come over. And that's really where it all began. So part of this Doris thing is part of that story too, because when I came from Cuba, I was Dorita, which
Ah.
just, Ita just means small.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's
So
cute.
they translated that as Doris. So
Okay.
my name was Doris Vilk till I was about 13 years old, when we were living in the Bahamas at the time, and we moved back to Florida.
Mhm.
And I was starting school, and I had to show, the birth certificate. And the birth certificate said my name was Dora Vilk,
Oh.
not Doris. And so at age 13, I became Dora, and everybody knew me as Dora Vilk. And I married Larry Shapiro, and I became Dora Vilk Shapiro.
Oh, how
But
funny.
when it came time to picking a pen name, I was thinking, wow, a steamy romance novel is really different from being a conservative dentist that teaches at a dental school that's an
Yeah.
adjunct professor. And I said, you know what? Dora Vilk Shapiro is a nice conservative lady.
Uh-huh.
Maybe Doris Vilk was that naughty one. And so that's how I picked the name, the
I love
pen
it. It's
name.
like, who's that? Beyonce and her Sasha Fierce, alter
Yeah.
ego. So, and I love that too, because sometimes we have to put on a different mask or whatever you want, a different name, a
Yes.
different something to pull something out of us, right?
Hmm.
So, for all of you out there who are thinking of yourselves as nice little, conservative ladies out there, but deep down inside you've got a little Doris Vilk or Sasha Fierce in you, right? You never know. You got to pull that out. So,
Yes.
awesome. I love that. Sheila, you've joined us. Oh, you're a friend of Doris. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for joining us.
And
Wonderful.
a past patient. She knows both. She knows both of
Oh,
me.
both sides of you. Very nice. I love it. I love it. So let's get into a little bit with dentistry. So,
Okay.
I must assume when you became a dentist, it wasn't a field with a lot of women just by the year that you're talking about and
Oh
when it was,
no.
So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about getting into dentistry. Why did you decide to become a dentist, and just about your experience as a woman in dentistry, that kind
Okay. When I was about 10 years old, we were living in the Bahamas, and I loved riding a bicycle. And I had a bicycle accident and broke my teeth. And, we didn't have all the treatment modalities back then that we have now. So I had to have a lot of work done, root canals that failed, and surgeries that failed, and losing teeth and implants and the whole bit. And what I learned was that I just felt so frustrated with that. I felt like there had to be a better way to do things. And that's how I got interested in dentistry. I loved art, and I loved working with my hands. I always used to make little cutouts and colorings and paintings. And so I always loved art, and I loved science. And dentistry was the perfect fit of, science and art. So it was a perfect. When I decided to be a dentist, I never really thought, oh, I'm a woman and I'm going into this men's profession. I just knew that I wanted to be a dentist. So when I applied, I was so surprised to find that in the years that I started dental school, which was 1981, there were just 16% of the class was women, and out practicing was maybe 2 or 3%. were women. So there really, I was a pioneer. I didn't realize that at the time, but I was a pioneer. There weren't a lot of women to be role models, to be your mentor, or any of that. The school, equipment, the ergonomics, the instruments, the drills, everything was designed, the chairs, everything was designed for men, not
Wow.
women,
Yeah.
not for our small hands and our, and I'm like 5'2", so I'm petite. And I wasn't chubby back then. I was like, a size 6 or whatever. So here I was, this little thing, always looked very young. And I looked like a little 15-year-old trying to be a dentist. And it was crazy. I never thought about it, but I realized it. And when they had the Me Too movement, when was that with COVID? You lose track of things. Like a couple of years ago, I
Mhm.
guess now, I started to realize all that harassment that I had experienced and never really thought about it. I wanted to be a dentist so badly. It was all I ever wanted. So I just kept trucking on and doing what I had to do. So I would look the other way. I wasn't going to report somebody. I would just smile and say thank you. When, like, I had transferred dental schools because I got married halfway through dental school. And one of the professors on one of my first times in the clinic comes to me and says something like, "Oh, you're that nice Jewish girl that just got married and just transferred here." And I said, "Yes, thank you, Dr. So and so." And he goes, "Don't you want to just be home and enjoy your married life and have children? You really want to be here to be a dentist?" And at the time I thought, "Oh, this nice other Jewish man is just trying to be nice." But looking back, I'm like, that was harassment, like
Yeah.
kind of saying I didn't deserve a spot in the class, to because that I really wanted to be a dentist. And yes, I wanted to have children,
Yeah.
but I wanted to be a dentist. And ironically, my son is also a dentist.
Oh, how funny.
He's
See,
he's
you
becoming a
were a role
dental
model.
surgeon. Yeah.
I love that. And you were not just a role model in that. So there's two things you said. So one, you also became a college professor, right? So you were
Yeah.
then the face for all these other women to see
Yes.
somebody out
Now,
there.
by the
That's
time I taught, like when I taught hygiene, it was still like the opposite discrimination. I had very few men in my dental hygiene class because
interesting.
the hygienists were considered a
Right.
woman's job.
Yep.
So as I taught over the 17 years at what used to be Broward Community College became Broward College, there were more and more men in the class
Mhm.
and more diversity in the class.
Nice.
Um, and we see the same things in the dental school. So by the time I was an adjunct professor at Nova, and I taught restorative
Mhm.
dentistry, which is fillings, and when students first get into dental school and are first learning like teeth anatomy and things like that. And the class was almost more women. I think it was like 52%
Wow.
or something like that. And again, lots of diversity in terms of
Mhm.
religion, gender, skin color, lifestyle choices. I don't know what
Yeah.
the latest political lingo is, but we
Right.
had everybody. It was very inclusive. And that
That,
was such a breath of fresh air well, that was not my experience when I was in school. So,
yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. And so, and I also, like you said, it's, I think women of, and you're a little bit older than I am. So I'm not quite sure, about 10 years, maybe. I'm not quite sure how much older
yeah.
they're, a little bit older than I am. And so,
61.
Okay, so all right, so that's good. So
Okay.
okay, really 71. I would have, okay,
61.
that's 20
61. Don't
years older
make
than
me
me. I thought
older.
you were about 10 years older. You look dang good, woman. My gosh. I
I
never would have thought
do.
that. I have so many women in my life who are 70 plus who I
Yes.
swear to God, I just think of them as 50. Like I just turned 50 and I don't think of them when I look at them. And I just think of them as the same age as me because they have so much vivaciousness and vibrancy
Yeah.
and, and thing. And you, wow, that surprised me. So
Oh,
anyways,
and most of my friends are all older because it's just the way it happened with my career, like just having to be very mature and
Mhm.
very focused and very driven, and so you kind of just geared towards that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned like how, like there was harassment things, but at the time you didn't really know it as that, right? Because those weren't words
No,
that were thrown around. Those weren't things that were brought to
no,
people's
no one
attention.
talked
And
about it.
I think so many women because I have a lot of women in Midlife Mojo who are 65 plus, a lot of women, about half of them.
Yes,
And so I'm sure you're not the only one who experienced that and didn't know
yes,
in the moment what it was. And
yes.
I have a teenager, a 16-year-old, and so
Hmm.
I always think, like she'll call me out on like, on not being politically correct enough about stuff. And I
Hmm.
think I am so like with the times,
Yes,
And so it really, I think when we only know we come from our perspective, right? So back then,
yes,
that's all you knew. But looking
yes,
back now, that you get to be a role model for, you mentioned your son.
yes,
So I don't, and I know I don't know if he just got married. I see you on Facebook, so I saw that
yes.
in
He
there.
just
So
got
maybe down the
married.
road there'll
I
be some
can't wait.
grandchildren that you can
Oh, I
inspire
can't
too.
wait.
So the Jewish
Yeah.
grandma, I'm a Jewish lady too, so you got to have that as
But
well.
I also went to St. Andrew's School for 4 years because when we lived in the
Uh
Bahamas,
huh.
you had to go to the private schools. There were only like 30 Jewish families in all the islands. So
Interesting.
here I was, this Cuban Jew at St. Andrew's School. It
Wow.
was I grew up in diversity, which is probably an unusual thing for
Hmm.
somebody my age group because I had a very different kind of childhood than
Yeah.
what most people would have had.
So
Yeah.
I know you write steamy romance novels, but maybe one day you got to
Yeah.
write the book of Doris Vil or the book of Dr. Doris Vilk Shapiro, I should say. Maybe
Yes. People
write
have
that
asked
story
me
because
to
you got a
do that.
story in there, right? That in there
Yes.
is a story right there to share,
Yes.
for sure. So, all right, well, let's talk about your writing a little bit. All right. So, how
Okay.
did you go? Not in general. Have you always been interested in writing? I mean, you mentioned the creative side of yourself.
You know, I Yes, I always loved to write, in creative writing and English classes and stuff. But as a dentist, I used to write too. I had a newsletter for my office. I used to write for the local like newspapers, like community newspapers, little dental advice columns, that were like semi advertorials or infomercials kind of things, like maybe something for Halloween on healthy treats,
Mhm.
um and that type of thing. So I was always writing.
Uh-huh.
I was president of two national organizations, NABO and American Business Women's Association, the
Mhm.
local chapters. And back then we had printed newsletters, so I would always have to write the president's message, so I was writing that.
Mhm.
So I was always writing and
Yeah.
using those muscles, but it was always nonfiction, not fiction.
Yeah.
But I had this story in my head since college days when I would walk to class and it was a daydream, and my heroine was really everything that I felt, Dora Vilk at the time was not. She's tall, I'm short. She has blue eyes. I have hazel eyes. She had beautiful long hair, and my hair's normally very, very short and very curly. You'll see that in a lot of my pictures on Facebook, but keratin and hair coloring, changes your look. And she could dance and sing. I can't do either of those things. I'm like totally tush challenged. And it was a daydream. It was a fantasy. And I wanted a boyfriend so bad. But here I was, this really geeky, nerdy, like science, speech communications major. And what nothing sexy about me at the time at all. So she was, I had built this fantasy world that I used to daydream about. So how it all started was I started to have a lot of health issues. Besides my cancer, and I had thyroid issues, but my main issue became with my hand. I think because of all those years of practicing dentistry with instruments and things that were really not designed for a petite and small hand, it put a lot of pressure and stress on my body. We didn't know about ergonomics back then. Like now we teach that in the schools, but didn't know about that back then. And so we ended up, having trouble with my hands. My fingers would spasm. And you can imagine I'm right handed. And if these fingers are spasming, how am I doing my dentistry? So in the beginning, I was able to cover up for it. I would give the patient a break, type my notes, stretch my fingers out. Towards the end of my career, I tried to work part time. And one day I was talking with my hygienist, Sharon, and the first book, which is Love Arrested, is actually dedicated towards Sharon. Sharon was my hygienist, and she was all into um, reading and naughty novels, Shayla Black, E.L. James with her 50 Shades of Grey. And we were talking, that's when 50 Shades of Grey was huge. And I was telling her, I had an idea for a romance story. And over lunch, I told her the basics of my daydreams and fantasy. And like I said, I wasn't working every day at that point because of the health issues. And when I went back, Sharon says to me, "Wow, I was thinking of your story and how good it is, and you should write that story. I would so read that story." And so I started. I went on vacation and I was started to write. I also was getting a lot of anxiety and depression because here I wanted to be a dentist since I was a 10-year-old girl, and I could see that my career was ending before my eyes. And I was also so nervous on the days I was working. I would be working, and behind the scenes in my brain, I would be saying, "Oh my God, my hand's spasming more and more. And am I going to be able to finish this procedure for my patient? And am I going to have to stop and call in one of the other doctors?" By then, I had sold my practice and I was working for a group that was not the best fit for me, in terms of the type of practice I was used to being at. And it was just this frustration and anxiety and depression. So I turned to writing as a way to just cope. I was busy getting the story out, and that was helping me. And Sharon became my first beta reader, reading the story. And because she liked all the naughtiness, she's like, "This is good, but you need to make this steamier." And every time she'd be steamier and steamier. So I started researching. As Also, because when I read 50 Shades, I was a goody two shoes and I didn't even know what half that stuff was. So I started researching all this stuff. The next thing I know, what happens when you go in and start researching stuff? You know how they start sending you all these ads? And so I start getting newsletters and things for, I got to try to keep this PG, but positions of the month and different toys and all these things and lotions and potions. And I'm like, the next thing I know, I'm just steaming up my books and bringing in the heat. And what I learned, we talk about in our group, Mojo, we talk about transitioning and learning something new about ourselves. And what I learned was that inside this conservative goody two shoes, Dr. Dora Vilk Shapiro was this naughty Doris Vilk that liked 50 Shades of Grey and Shayla Black and Sylvia Day and all these like erotic kind of romances. And I also realized that I could write that kind of stuff, sometimes even better than they could because I was very good at describing things. I had described things my whole life in my career because in being a dentist, to try to explain things to my patients, I couldn't use the dental terminology. They had no clue. So I would come up with analogies like don't scrub, use a hard brush on your teeth, use a soft brush because you wouldn't take your fine china and scrub it with a Brillo pad. And then my patients understood what I meant. See? So I was always good at describing things. So the scenes in my book became very, very naughty. You know, I could describe those images very well. And that's how it all began. It's all Sharon's fault. What
It's
can I
all Sharon's fault. We're gonna go blame it on
Sharon
Sharon.
and 50 Shades of Grey that turned me into this saucy person.
I love it. But that's such a great point, right? You never know along your road of life who is going to inspire you to do what, who is going to light a
Mhm.
spark under you, right? Would have you ever expected that your coworker would have, gotten you to the career that you have now, right? Those two things would have
No,
never gone together. So
never.
it's about being open, right? Open and
Mhm.
listening and hearing and listening to maybe that inner voice, right? There was an inner Doris Vilk in you, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until somebody else tried to bring it out that you really were
Mhm.
able to do that. And I love that you had to, I was cracking up when I was off screen as you were describing, doing all the research for it. I was like, oh, I
Oh
get
my
that's
goodness.
so
I'm
fun.
like, please, if I die, somebody wipe my phone.
So funny, so funny. And so let's talk about steamy novels. So I know they're not for 50 Shades of Grey. I know people who are very against those types of books. That's
Yes.
not for them. So if
Yeah.
that's not for you, you can just go shut off the rest of this video and move on. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly all great. No judgment there. Just like there's no
Yeah.
judgment on those who, get like that sexually charged types of books as well. Right.
Yeah.
So there's something for everything. That's what makes this world go round. So I want
Yes.
you ladies to know that there is something for everyone. Because I did read her book, as I said yesterday, and I knew right away it was. I know some friends that was definitely not for, right. Right, and
Yeah.
then I knew some
And
friends I was literally texting today saying, "Okay, you got to read this one," right?
one of my best friends read my book and liked the story, but she skipped over all the sexy parts because that's not her thing. Like
Yeah,
she's kind of
and it's
prudish.
a very well written book and a great story, even
But
without that. Yeah.
then I had another person who's in their mid 80s, and she's the opposite. She took a highlighter to all the sex scenes because she wanted to go back and just read those.
That's
So I
hysterical.
go, there's something for everyone.
Well,
Whatever floats your boat.
exactly, and I've said it was a really. So I read Love, the first one. I
The
love
Love Arrested.
Arrested, that
Yeah,
one you just held up,
Love
yes. So
Arrested is
that's
the
I'm
first
so
one.
first of all, I'll let you know that is like a Jill thing. The second I finish a book, I forget the title and the author. Like you can't, like literally when someone says in our book club, "What did you read last month?" I'm like, I don't know. I got to look it up. Like it's like a weird. My whole life, it's been like a weird, and I read a lot. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyways, it's a very well written. Sometimes you talk about those kind of they're not that well written. It was a great
Yes.
story. It was very well written without the good parts,
Yes.
right? But I too found myself searching for the good parts a little bit. So that was excellent because back in so my first introduction to the world of, I guess, erotica, steamy romance, that kind of thing was back in college. I don't know if you ever read I don't know, heard of the Sleeping Beauty series. But if
No.
you haven't, that's one to
Oh,
go
books
look
to
up.
read.
That to this day, there's some images in there. I'm like, oh, that's still popping up. I'm like, wow, like So, and I will say that 50 Shades of Grey, it was good, not quite my thing. I act,
Yeah.
so again, you just have to give things a try where you're at, what interests you,
Hmm.
and so forth. But I will just tell you, ladies, that, Doris's book really was, I mean, that first book was a great story. I'm looking forward to like finding out what happens
Oh
to Ms.
yeah.
Chatham and what goes on in her life. So that is definitely awesome. So I'm curious, what does your husband, your son, what do they all think
Oh
about
my
you doing
goodness.
this
It's so
change?
funny. My husband is not a reader.
Mhm.
And he is Winnie the Pooh, which is one of the reasons I wrote the book because I needed like a sexy man in my life. I needed Tigger.
Uh-huh.
Winnie's great, but I needed something more.
Yeah.
And but he's familiar with the books because I would read drafts to him as I was writing the book.
Hmm.
My son, because he's been in dental school and now oral surgery residency, hasn't read it but knows about it, and gave me some of the terminology for it, because when I was writing, like, the lines, the dialogue between the characters,
Hmm.
I would ask him a question like, "Okay, Jordan, that's my son.
Hmm.
You're at a bar, you see a woman, you want her. What are you saying?"
Hmm.
And he goes, "I'd like to tap that." Well, I'm sure you remember reading that in the
Yeah.
book. So,
That's funny.
so he was a kind of my research department too.
That's funny.
My daughter-in-law, who was not my daughter-in-law at the time, was just his girlfriend. She bought this. I have a very cute picture of the two of them when they first got love arrested, and they're standing with their copies. And she read it, thought it was really cool. She gets her mom to buy the book. Her mom reads it in her book club and FaceTimes me with her book club in Dallas. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And everybody at the book club knows my what ended up being my future
Right.
daughter-in-law, and is saying, "Oh my God, Nikki is dating this naughty lady's son."
Did you
So
ever
that
see
was that was a hoot.
that is? Did you ever see the movie Meet the Fockers? There's
Yes,
and what's her name?
yes.
It was Barbara Streisand, right?
Barbara
Yeah, that's
Streisand,
it.
yes.
That's your
That's what I
character.
felt like. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh my God, because we hadn't quite met in person yet. So she only knew this Doris Vilk. She
Mhm.
didn't know the Dr. Dora Vilk Shapiro.
Funny.
So it was like the opposite kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's how my family, my mother and my siblings and my uncle and aunts, we were at like a Passover Seder. And I think I was telling them about the trouble I was having in dentistry and how I planned to write a steamy, sexy romance. And they looked at me like I was nuts. And I had two heads on that night.
I bet.
And my husband, my final thing I'll say on this question is
Yeah.
that he thinks I got anesthesia brain because I had two major surgeries for uterine cancer
Mhm.
and my thyroid removed within 10 days of each
Oh,
other.
wow.
And he thinks I suffered damage during getting too much anesthesia too close together,
That's funny.
and that Doris Vilk is a result of anesthesia brain. So
Oh,
I'll leave
that
it
is
at that.
hysterical. That I love that. Right. Some cellular change there. That is so
Yeah.
funny. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about the series a little bit. You've pulled up Love Arrested, and I know you said
Okay.
a series. So talk a little bit about the series, all of the
Okay.
books and a little bit more about all that. Good stuff.
Okay. So the main story is this actress and model is framed for a crime she didn't commit. And all that happens to her when she goes to the prison. So the first part of the book is a lot like if you're a fan of Wentworth or Orange is the New Black. In fact, when my husband and I binged on Orange is the New Black, which we loved, um, he was like, "God, that sounds like your story." And I'm like, "You're right. Like, people are going to think I copied Orange is the New Black." And we talked, you mentioned before about the universe giving you little signs, like I
Mhm.
call them winks from heaven.
Yep.
I go, the universe, Sharon was telling me, seeing Orange is the New Black was telling me that
Yep.
my story needed to get out.
Yep.
So Love Arrested is mostly that story of the prison, of what happens to her in prison, and how what happens to her love life. And can you find a love life, a new love, when you're in a very dark place in your life? Are you open to receive? And it's really also about a woman's empowerment, because she has all these challenges and negative things happen, but yet she's able to overcome, she's able to stay authentic to who she really is on the inside, and able to open her heart again, even though she's been hurt by so many times. And that's something that resonates with me, and I know resonates with a lot of women, especially in the mojo generations, because we were the pioneers in a lot of things. In the second book, it follows both the main couple and some of the other characters in the book along as to what happens to them in the future. And the second book is Love Attempted. And Love Attempted can be read as a single book. So for those people that are a little bit like afraid of maybe reading a lot about a fetish or about something that may be too violent or something, then I would say, try Love Attempted, and you can read it as a standalone. And then if you want to know more, you can kind of read the backstory and then read the future. I've had some people do that. And then the last book, the most recent one I published, was Love Avenged. Um, and this one kind of brings the couple into, again, following them more into the future, and some new characters, new challenges. When you're in a more established relationship, what are the challenges there? So the name Love It, Love Arrested, like I said, is dedicated to Sharon. Love Attempted is dedicated to my husband Larry, because isn't that what happens when you've been in a long-term relationship? I go, we're going on 37, 38 years of marriage. It's not enough on most days, but too long on some. Anybody feel that way? And so I feel sometimes long-term partnerships, it is a love attempted. You're attempting to still love each other like you did in that honeymoon phase to make your relationship work. And my son, that's who Love Avenged is dedicated to. He gave me the title of Love Avenged, and I love that. I wanted to keep it each book with L and A because it does start out in Los Angeles, and so I like that the initials were always LA. And people have asked me, will there ever be a fourth book? I leave that up to the fans to give me that feedback. I do have ideas for a fourth book. I even have the name. It would be called Love Ascended. And so I'm waiting for feedback.
I love it. Well, I can see I'm reading some of the comments. Someone says, well, my hubby will be buying these books for me. So there you go. All
That's
right. So
great.
the fans are looking. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. So just totally off topic here, but two little coincidences we have. My husband is Larry as well.
Oh, another
And I
Larry.
also was a speech communications major.
Yeah. You see?
Yeah, yeah, so I'm telling you, see, I love these
There we
conversations
go.
because I get to learn so much about people that I didn't know and find those little connections that we have. So
There's
I love,
always
that,
connection.
and I love that with you, you didn't just take stop at one book, you had more in you. Right. And that
Yeah.
you have ideas. And that's what I want. That's kind of what Mojo is, right? It's taking this idea and where can I build on it? And how can I follow my
Yes.
passion to the next thing and to my next thing? And like you said, you don't know where it's going to go. Why do you have to know where it's going to
Yeah.
go?
You
If you had,
don't.
right, if you could have never written this part of your life, 10 years ago, I'm
No,
sure.
no, I could
So,
not. No, I was
so
not the same person. And
yeah.
also to realize your own growth and to keep growing. That
Mhm.
as I kept writing, I kept growing and evolving as a
Yeah.
person. Like the characters evolved, but I evolved too. And in doing the research, I learned a lot of things, and getting feedback from other people and the fans, and even some men that read the
Yeah.
book, and I've had some all kinds of diversity that's read the book, and to feel good that that I put a story out there that's welcomed by a lot of different ages and different types of people. And it was great. And now I want to do for the future. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to keep this series going.
Mhm.
People have encouraged me to write my biography because
Yep.
from Cuba to writing this, there's been a lot of
Just
information
listen to this conversation, I was
on
like, you
the
got like 4 stories
way.
just in your
Yes,
own story.
yes.
So, that's
And
wonderful.
I also have been writing for those people in the group that are my personal friends on Facebook, which are a lot of people.
Mhm.
They know I love, my son Jordan got this puppy this year, Rupert Winston. And I've been writing as my daughter in law sends me pictures. I post the pictures because he is adorable. She taught him all these tricks. And I've written all these things as if the puppy is talking to us. And people have been loving that. My friends,
I
I
love
shouldn't
it.
say people. My friends love it. And everybody's like, write a children's book. Well, originally when I wanted to write a book, it was going to be a dental book, either a dental advice book, or it was going to be a children's book, a dental children's book.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking maybe that's still in me,
Mhm.
except it wouldn't be this character. I even had a name, Mona Begonia. And Mona Begonia was going to be the star, but now I'm like, no, it's the adventures of Rupert Winston. That's what's
Love it.
inside of me.
Yeah.
I know an illustrator, and some of you know her from other groups too, Sabrina Fajardo. And I've already reached out to Sabrina and my daughter-in-law because I would publish under Dora Vilk Shapiro
Mhm.
because I cannot mix. You know,
Yeah.
I am who I am, and I'm appropriate when I need to be appropriate,
Correct,
and not
correct.
when
You
I
don't want
want to
somebody Googling the
play.
wrong thing.
And yes, so no, it's Dora Vilk Shapiro and Nicole Shapiro are gonna write the Adventures of Rupert Winston. Um, Adventures of Rupert Winston is already an Instagram page.
Love it.
So we've kind of already started
Mhm.
that flow. So I feel like, you know what? I still have a whole other mojo inside of me that's even different than the dentist and the steamy
Yeah.
novelist. So keep your options open and be
Yeah.
open to life.
Definitely. I really look forward to watching you evolve, right? 70, you're just starting to get going, I hear here. So I'm going to put here for you ladies who are interested in getting her books or just learning more about Doris. There's her website crawling across the screen there. But just tell us in general, how can they connect with you? What's, just to stay in your world?
Okay, so the Dora Vilk Shapiro is my personal page. That's where you'll see Rupert and me and Larry and all that stuff. The Doris Vilk is more the stuff about the book. And my website, which is www.dorisvilk.com, has links to everything. It has links to buying the books on Amazon, so it's all very secure and safe because you're getting the book from Amazon, not from me.
Mhm.
If anybody wants it autographed and they buy the print, I'd be happy to autograph it for
That's
them.
that's great.
Um, and it has links to all the social media. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group. Don't
Yeah.
ask me what it's called. It's called something like Let's Talk Susan Chatham, something or other. But if you're interested, I can send the link out for that. And yeah, it's an escape. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's talking about your senses. It's really about a woman's empowerment. That's really what the story is. And it's we all need something to escape to when we're feeling anxious or depressed or recovering or have some trauma in our life. It's like it's okay to reach out to others and get help. and get
Yeah,
help.
and like sometimes in this day and age with all the stress runner, escaping into a book is a great way to help yourself
Mhm.
and take yourself to another world for
Yeah.
sure.
And
Um,
journaling and writing, whether you do
yes,
it just journaling, or you may also have a book, or people listening may
yeah.
also have a book inside of them. Like, just start writing. You'll be amazed what's going to come out.
Yeah. Well, I can see that it's shaping your midlife mojo years, this little
Mhm.
shift. And so this conversation has been wonderful. I knew it would flow nice and comfortably with you. And I just have really enjoyed. I know I've learned a lot. I hope you ladies have learned a lot. Do you have any like last sentence or something to say before I send you off and finish us up here?
I would just say dream big, be open, try new things, because something may be seeming like the world is ending for you, like my year, like people think it's 2020, but for me it was 2014 when all that stuff happened. And I'm like, there's another side. You know, you might have to get medication, you might have to get doctors, but there's there's a mojo out there waiting for you. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not done till it's done.
That's correct. That's what I said. I always say I'm going down kicking and streaming. That's how I'm going down. So you're going to see me running until the end for sure. Well, thank you so much for having us here, ladies. I hope you go. Oh, we've
Thank
got a
you.
question before we go. Hold on. Somebody asked, how do you handle writer's block if it happens at all?
Oh
Do you ever have
wow,
any
it
writer's block?
does happen. And I even have a cup that says writer's block is when your character stop talking to you, which I thought was hysterical.
Yep.
What I did was stop writing and just start, like, for me the nature is my happy place, and for me it's the beach. So sitting at the beach, sitting at the pool, meditating, just relaxing. And you'd be surprised, something happened at the pool and it inspired a scene that is actually, I never write things exactly how they are in my life. You'll never know what's really Dora and what's just a made up thing.
Right.
But it inspired a scene that takes place in Love Attempted. So
Nice.
that's how I would say to that is, just stay. There's people that say you have to write every day, but that's not my philosophy. My philosophy is do it when it's creative. And being retired, and midlife, I have that freedom, which I didn't have as a dentist. Dentist, you have insurance, you have patient schedules.
Yeah.
There's no freedom.
I love that. So I'm all about taking inspired action. So thank you again so much for
Thank
being
you,
here.
thank you.
Ladies, any other questions, put them in there. Doris is going to go put her website in after we're all done into the chat and answer any
Mhm.
questions and talk with you all. But thank you, thank you. I'm just hang out there in the green room
Bye,
as I always
everyone.
call it. Yeah,
Thank
and I'll be right
you
with
for
you
listening.
here. Let me see. There we go. All right, ladies. Well, that was a wonderful conversation. And I just want to thank you so much for hanging out with me here on a Woman with Mojo Conversations with an inspiring woman over 40. And Doris was definitely inspiring. So I look forward to next month and make sure that you join us. It's the second Wednesday of the month at 7:30 that I do these interviews. I may be adding in a second one, but right now it's this once a month time. So definitely make sure and watch these interviews. That you never know what they can inspire in you to help you find your own midlife mojo. So I am just going to end here with my little exit video and